The House will come to order. Representative Jackson will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Schiebel, please call the roll.
Representatives Armagost, Bacon, Barone, Byrd, Representative Byrd. It's excused. Basenecker, Bottoms, Bradfield, Bradley, Representative Bradley.
Excused.
Brooks, Brown, Caldwell, Camacho, Carter, Clifford, DeGraff, Representative DeGraff,
Excused.
Duran, English, Representative English,
Excused.
Espinoza, Foray, Froelich, Garcia, Representative Garcia,
Excused.
Garcia Sander, Gilchrist, Gonzalez, Hamrick, Hartsook, Jackson, Johnson, Joseph, Kelty, Leader, Lindsay, Rep. Lindsay's on the wall, Linstead, Luck, Lukens, Representative Lukens is excused. Mabry, Marshall, Representative Marshall. Rep. Marshall's excused. Okay. Martinez, Morrow, McCormick, Pascal, Phillips, Puglisi, Richardson, Ricks,
Present.
Rutinel, Ryden, Sirota, Representative Sirota, Smith,
Here.
Soper, Representative Soper is excused. Stuart K. Stuart R. Story, Sukla, Taggart, Titone. Aye. Representative Valdez is excused. Velasco, Weinberg, Wilford, Winter, Woodrow. Representative Woodrow is excused. Woog, Zokai, and Madam Speaker.
We'll talk. I'll find you. Okay. With 59 present, 6 excused, we do have a quorum. Representative Jackson. Oops. Representative Jackson.
Madam Speaker, I move that the Journal of Monday, March 24th, 2025 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Members, you have heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Members, I'll invite you to take your seats. We are moving on to third reading. Members, please take your seats. We are beginning third reading. Thank you. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1187.
House Bill 1187 by Representative English, also Senator Winter, concerning the release of certain documentation submitted to the court in a proceeding related to a civil protection order.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1187 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1187 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Representative Smith, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Smith votes yes. Please close the machine. With 32 aye, 28 no, and 5 excused, House Bill 1187 is lost. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over House Bill 1236 until tomorrow.
House Bill 1236 will be laid over until tomorrow. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1290.
House Bill 1290 by Representatives Lindstedt and Valdez, also Senator Mullica, concerning transit worker safety.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1290 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1290 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Representative Smith, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Smith votes yes. Please close the machine. With 37 aye, 24 no, and 4 excused, House Bill 1290 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 51.
Senate Bill 51 by Senators Michelson, Janae, and Peltonar, also Representative Lindstedt, concerning the definition of operating costs for calculating cost efficiency metrics for the Regional Transportation District.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 51 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 51 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Representative Smith, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Smith votes yes. Please close the machine. With 60 aye, 1 no, and 4 excused, Senate Bill 51 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 23.
Senate Bill 23 by Senators Pelton R. and Michael Sinjane, also Representative Lindstedt, concerning local government audit exemption thresholds.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 23 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 23 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Representative Smith, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Smith votes yes. Kelty and Winter. Please close the machine. With 58 aye, 1 no, and 6 excused, Senate Bill 23 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 14.
Senate Bill 14 by Senator Danielson, also Representatives Garcia and Titone, concerning repealing the statutory unconstitutional ban on same-sex marriage.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 14 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 14 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Representative Smith, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Smith votes yes. Please close the machine. With 45 aye, 14 no, and 6 excused, Senate Bill 14 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Smith, co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Oh. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 67.
Senate Bill 67 by Senators Simpson and Roberts, also Representatives Martinez and Winter, concerning changes to the Prosecution Fellowship Program.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 67 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 67 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Representative Smith, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Smith votes yes. Please close the machine. With 59 aye, 2 no, 4 excused, Senate Bill 67 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Smith, co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1222.
House Bill 1222 by Representatives Winter and Lukens, also Senators Roberts and Simpson, concerning measures to preserve healthcare access provided by rural independent pharmacies.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1222 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1222 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Representative Smith, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Smith votes yes. Representative Luck. Please close the machine. With 61 aye, 1 no, 3 excused, House Bill 1222 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, reports of committees of reference.
Committee on Appropriations, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bills 1001 as amended, 1082 as amended, 1130, 1213 as amended, 1239 as amended, 1248 as amended, and Senate Bill 33 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move the following bills be made special orders on March 25th, 2025 at 9:24 a.m. Senate Bill 188, Senate Bill 199, House Bill 1004, House Bill 1013, House Bill 1285, House Bill 1213, House Bill 1245, House Bill 1117, Senate Bill 15, and House Bill 1289.
Seeing no objection, the bills listed by the Majority Leader will be made special orders today, March 25th at 9:24 a.m. One announcement, members. Representatives Byrd, Sirota, and Taggart will be excused at such time as needed so that the Joint Budget Committee can meet. Representative English. Members, you have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, Representative English will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for reading a bill at length. Committee reports are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen on iLegislate and in today's folder on your box account. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the majority leader. The code rule is relaxed. Mr. Sheba, please read the title of Senate Bill 25-188.
Senate Bill 188 by Senators Coleman and Rodriguez, also Representatives McCluskey and Duran, concerning the payment of the expenses of the Legislative Department.
Majority Leader Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 188 and the Appropriations Report.
To the Appropriations Report. Majority Leader Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In Appropriations, we passed an amendment that reduced the general fund appropriations in the bill based on the JBC Common Compensation Policy, restored to one FTE to LCS, the cost of which is $98,880 total general fund, from $90,000 to $880 for compensation and associated costs, and $8,000 for para, and remove the $1 million transfer from the Legislative Department cash fund to the general fund, and I ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on our Appropriations Report? Seeing none, the question before us is adoption of the Appropriations Report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The Appropriations Report is adopted. Speaker McCluskey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I am excited to share with you the Legislative Department budget for next year. That is Senate Bill 188. We owe a debt of gratitude to our leadership management team, Director Castle, DeCecco, Harper, and Auditor Carey, also our Chief Clerk, Vanessa Riley, and the Senate Secretary, Esther Van Morik, for their dedication and hard work in bringing this budget together that you see before you today. Each of our legislative oversight committees had an opportunity to review the individual agencies within the legislative department, OLLS, LCS, our audit department, and JBC. Most of those committees provided unanimous support in their oversight of each of the individual agency budgets. What you see before you today is a very thoughtful approach to operating the House, the Senate, and the legislative branch for the 25-26 year. We have overall taken an 11% reduction by eliminating letter and statutory interim committees, reducing our operating costs in the House. We did an additional $2 million transfer from our legislative cash fund, so we are now transferring $6 million from our cash fund over to the general fund to help offset the budget impacts and pressures that we are facing this year. I am so pleased and grateful to members of the Executive Committee, particularly Minority Leader Puglisi, Majority Leader Duran, for helping us work through the budget this year, and ask for your support in passing the Legislative Department budget.
Representative Bottoms.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just the appropriations bill, and I understand that most of it's just fine. The only reason I'm coming up here is because we have addressed this a couple times. We addressed it in approps too. But there's over $1 million that has been appropriated toward furniture in our move, right? For you on the camera, we're moving all the representatives into the Capitol, sending everybody else over across the street. We're spending over $1 million on furniture, and that doesn't include the money that we've already spent on furniture that some of you in this room have gone and looked at. And I just don't think this is a good look for us right now. I think these are the kind of things that put a bad taste in the mouth of the constituents all across the state when we have to cut $1 billion, but we're going to spend a few $1 million on furniture for us. To me, that's just not a good look. I don't think it's like a moral issue. I just think when it's tight like this and we're trying to cut money, I think this is the time when we say, well, maybe we just deal with the old furniture. The old furniture is not horrible. We can get by with it. It's the same thing. I always look at this as something within somebody's personal life. When money is tight and you're trying to cut your family budget, you don't go out and buy a bunch of brand new furniture. And so to me, this is just a bad look. I wish we would have cut it out earlier. It has not been cut out. It's still there. And I wish it would go away. I wouldn't have a problem with this, but because of that, I will vote no on this because I think it's a bad look. So that's just my few cents that we could be saving, but we're not.
Representative Barone. Oh,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also like to reflect what my colleague just said. We as families, we have our own budget as well. Sometimes we want to do something, but we don't have the money to do it at the moment, so we hold it off. That's the way I see this as well. It really isn't a good look. Don't get me wrong, I would love new furniture, but right now is not the time. I don't believe that this is the time to be able to do that. It's going to leave a bad taste in our constituents' mouths, to be honest with it, to see that we as legislators get new furniture when they are getting some of their programs cut. It's coming from a good place, but it's not the time right now, so I also urge a no vote. Thank you.
Speaker McCloskey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And members, I'm actually glad this question and observation has been raised because I do want to explain in a bit of detail what is happening here. As many of you may be aware, several years ago, the Executive Committee launched a complete renovation of the Annex building, which is right across the street. I'm sure you've all seen the construction going on over there. We are moving all of our legislative, nonpartisan staff over to that building. We have 591 employees in the legislative department, roughly 450 FTE. The money that we initially budgeted for furniture as a part of this renovation, this construction project, was higher than what we are now seeing come in as bids. We are looking at roughly $1 million for the furniture for that entire building. This is not for members. This is for that building. 198 workstations, 19 conference and meeting rooms, 10 additional support rooms for members of the General Assembly, 3 nonpartisan staff agencies, and the budget of $1 million will help us furnish all of those workstations. The reason that we need new furniture is that these workstations are much smaller. The furniture we currently have in this building, as many of you know, is decades old, and it was time for us to help our staff by most efficiently and effectively furnishing that building. Because of the concerns of our budget this year, what we have done is take an additional $2 million from our cash fund for a total of $6 million to be sure that we are offsetting the cost of the furniture. We recognize we too want to do our part. And I want to emphasize that our cash fund will have a balance of roughly $9 to $10 million remaining. We try to hold a 15% emergency reserve, much like the state does in their general fund reserves. This is a way for us to be prepared in the event that we ever have a pandemic, a recession, or another economic downturn. So we are still with a balance to cover the needs of the legislative branch, and we are able to contribute back to the general fund. I ask for your support on Senate Bill 188.
Representative Kelty.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Madam Speaker. I'm not sure what you are when you're not up there. What are I, just representative? Okay. Thank you for the explanation. During our SMART meetings, I was pretty hard on people. Each division that came in, I was, why do you need the money? Where is it going? Why, this is hard. This is Colorado's hard-earned money, and I was really hard on them, and I cannot not be hard on ourselves. And so for me, I'm going to be a no on this because I really feel that sometimes we just have to make do, especially when you don't have the money. Taking it from the cash fund to the general fund, it's just in my mind, it's a shell game. It's fuzzy math. You know, money is money no matter where it is. And I really believe that if we're expecting others to make cuts, we should also be making cuts ourselves. And it's just responsible finances. It's just taking care of what you can take care of with whatever means that you have and not borrowing from one to pay the other. So I am going to be a no on this, and I think that we can make do this year. Let's look at it next year, but this is not the year for something like this. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 188? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 188. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Senate Bill 188 is adopted. Mr. Sheba, please read the title of Senate Bill 199.
Senate Bill 199 by Senators Lundin and Rodriguez, also Representatives McCluskey and Puglisi, concerning suspending legislative interim activities and in connection therewith reducing an appropriation.
Minority Leader Puglisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the Appropriations Committee report
To the committee report.
and the bill, and Senate Bill 199.
To the committee report, Minority Leader Puglisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We made some adjustments to the appropriations because of an amendment that was ran in the Senate that was run inappropriately, and we have fixed that through this Appropriations Committee report, and I would ask for an aye vote.
Speaker McCluskey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And members, we do need to amend our Appropriations Committee report to help fully restore the Colorado Youth Advisory Council. So with that, I move L015 and ask that it be properly displayed.
One moment. Members, this is a multi-page amendment, and it was distributed on March 20th. It has been moved and properly displayed. Speaker McCluskey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to explain again briefly to everyone, Senate Bill 199 is suspending our statutory interim committees for 1 year to help contribute again to our budget deficit. In the executive committee's work, we did fully suspend the Colorado Youth Advisory Council. Over in the Senate, they made several amendments, one of which included changing COYAC and restoring that to its entirety, with the exception that the committee would no longer be able to bring forward or recommend legislation. This committee report, this amendment, I apologize, L015, fully restores what was in statute for COYAC prior to Senate Bill 188. And we have just caught a typo on this amendment. So I am going to move L016 to L015.
The amendment has been moved and properly displayed. Speaker McCluskey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We simply are making a substitution for a typo on the sections, and I ask for an aye vote.
Members, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L16. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Amendment L16 is adopted. Speaker McCluskey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I ask for your support on L015 to fully restore COYAC.
Members, the question before us is adoption of Amendment L015. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Amendment L015 is adopted. Minority Leader Puglisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill reduces appropriations. The Executive Committee has worked really hard to identify some areas where we can give some relief to the budget, as was previously discussed. This is suspending certain legislative interim committees while we are trying to go through the budget and help alleviate some of the budget concerns. And I think it's a good bill for showing our fiscal responsibility, and I would ask for an aye vote. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before.
I ask for an aye vote on the committee report.
Okay, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The Appropriations Committee report as amended is adopted. Minority Leader Puglisi to the bill.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. To the bill, still a fiscally responsible bill. Within the last minute, nothing has changed, and I would ask for an aye vote. Thank you.
There any further discussion on Senate Bill 199? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 199 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Senate Bill 199 as amended is adopted. Majority Leader Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move House Bill 1004 till after House Bill 1013.
House Bill 1004 will be moved till after 1013.
Mr. Shebo, please read the title to House Bill 1013.
House Bill 1013 by Representatives English and Bacon, also Senator Coleman, concerning social visitation rights for a person confined in a correctional facility.
Assistant Minority Leader Bacon. Or Majority Leader Bacon.
That's cool. That's cool. All right. You're listening. I move House Bill 1013.
So moved. To the bill.
Thank you, members. We are really excited to bring to you House Bill 1013. This bill is a Black Caucus bill this session. And essentially what the bill says is that people, their families, children, and loved ones do have a right to see those who are incarcerated. The crux of the bill is simply that. Currently, visitation is a privilege, whereas the purpose of this bill is to make it a right. And so what that means is one does not earn visitation. However, they have visitation in our bill, but there still could be reasons in which one would not be able to visit, and that's primarily over safety concerns. We heard a bunch of testimony in committee about how important it is for children to see their parents, for parents to see their children, and how those relationships and those opportunities do actually change one's behavior behind the walls. And so, again, this bill was really important to hear from communities, affectionately termed in the beginning Right to Hug. It came from a movement out of the Midwest brought by children and families on the ability to connect with those who are incarcerated. And with that, we're going to go ahead and move an amendment, and then we'll talk further about the bill. So I move L2 and ask that it be displayed.
That is a proper motion. L2 has been properly displayed. To the amendment.
Thank you, members. This amendment comes from after speaking to Colorado Winds, who represents the corrections officers, and they asked that As we move into making rules, because again, the crux of the bill allows DOC to make rules around visitation in this way, that they are consulted with. And we believe, since they are the front line in working with those who are behind the walls there, we wanted to honor this and recognize our corrections officers. And with that, we ask for an aye vote on L2.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L2? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L002. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. L002 passes. To the bill. Representative English.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to my colleague, Assistant Majority Leader Bacon, for being my co-prime on this bill. And as she said, this is a Black Caucus priority bill, so I'm honored to run this particular piece of legislation to ensure that people that are incarcerated can still stay connected to their loved ones, because this is important for our mental health. And we always say in this chamber that there are mental health issues. So this is one of those bills that will help curtail some of those mental health issues by ensuring people that are incarcerated can remain connected to their family and the outside world. Thank you.
Representative Armagost.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And hearing this in committee, the debates that we had, the issues that were had in committee, first off, the stories that we heard were horrible. I mean, hearing from families that were struggling through the idea of not being able to visit somebody they would drive across, 4 hours across the state, not being able to visit or see somebody because they'd get there and find out that a visitation was canceled for whatever reason. That's rough. That being said, there are things that do happen within Department of Corrections, within our jails. Me being a former corrections deputy, knowing that there are issues that occur where visitations cannot be possible. Security supersedes the visitation, and those have to be rescheduled. I understand that can be frustrating to some and seem like a very horrible situation to be in, but at the same time, that's kind of what happens with the basis of staffing and resources that we have in our prisons. So what I do appreciate is the amendment that came forward.
Excuse me, Representative Armagost. Colleagues, I know we are all very excited to represent our districts here, but if you could please keep the volume just a little bit lower or move your conversation to the side. Representative Armagost.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The amendment did seem to address that issue pretty significantly, so I do appreciate the amendment. I just wanted to reiterate the concern that was had by those of us in committee that heard this was simply that DOC and our prisons and jails don't have the resources to make and accommodate every visitation. So there are going to be those stories where people have those horrible things happen, the cancellations and families being turned around. The families didn't sign up for that, that's for sure. So that's just one thing that we have to think about, both sides of this. And for those reasons, I don't see any issue with the bill based on the fact that they are still communicating with the DOC to make sure that it can be accommodated as well.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1013? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1013. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1013 passes. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 25-1285. Oh, apologies. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of the House Bill 1004.
House Bill 1004 by Representatives Woodrow and Mabry, concerning pricing coordination by landlords and in connection therewith, prohibiting landlords from using coordinators, prohibiting coordinators from facilitating agreements that reduce competition between landlords, and prohibiting two or more landlords from engaging in consciously parallel pricing coordination.
Representative Woodrow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1004 and the Business Affairs and Labor Committee report.
To the Business Affairs and Labor Committee report.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. It is an honor to stand with Rep. Mabry as we present House Bill 25-1004, our bill to prevent collusion and price fixing between residential landlords. Friends, as someone who believes in the power of free markets, we must recall that one of those freedoms includes freedom from collusion. We need competitors to compete, especially on critical terms like price. Unfortunately, with the advent of the internet and massive data collection and sharing, certain actors have developed sophisticated price-setting algorithms. A White House report found that these algorithms replace competition with collusion, leading to increased inflated prices for tenants. In Denver alone, these algorithms have added an average of $136 per month and $1,600 per year, almost an entire average month's rent, due to unlawful price fixing. This legislation is needed because clarity in the law is kindness. The lawsuits challenging this conduct under current law, while in our view meritorious, will take too long to be resolved to provide the relief our tenants need now. We thank all of the stakeholders who have worked tirelessly to get us amendments that strike the right balance. With that, I turn it over to my co-prime.
Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I am excited to bring House Bill 1004, the sequel to House Bill 1057 from last year. Honored to be on it with Rep. Woodrow. I'm going to dig in a little bit to the bill on the committee report because we brought a strike below in committee, and the strike below in the committee report will now be the bill. I want to highlight, before I really dig in, that I want to thank stakeholders who were in opposition to the bill, who worked with us on language. We addressed concerns of businesses here in Colorado, what they were worried about with this legislation. So I'm glad we got to work with the Apartment Association, the realtors, and others to clarify some language here and make sure that we're clear about what we're doing. Our country has a long antitrust tradition that goes back to the passage of the Sherman Act in the 1890s. Republicans were the original party that spearheaded this. We have a bipartisan tradition of antitrust law. So let's talk about what that means. When they passed the Sherman Act, what they were trying to address is rail and steel barons getting together in a back room, competitors getting together in a back room and deciding, colluding, on what price they were going to charge consumers. That makes our markets not free. And so what the Sherman Act was about making sure you can't get in a smoke-filled back room with your competitor and fix prices. What's happening now is companies are replacing that smoke-filled back room with a computer algorithm. And what this bill says is that also violates our antitrust law. The idea is that there should be free competition among those who are engaged in commerce. When one side of the market controls all of the information and they collude to increase prices, they are breaking the law. And don't take my word for it, take the word of the Department of Justice, who has been suing the main company that has been doing this for multiple years. And I'll add that at the beginning of this year, they added some big corporate landlords that operate here in our state to the lawsuit, alleging that they're involved in this price fixing. I'll highlight that my co-prime sponsor mentioned that use of this software has led to an increase in rent of $136 a month, or between $1,400 and $1,600 a year. That's in the Denver metro area, and that is based on a report that was put out by the White House. And RealPage, the company that does this, has been crystal clear that their aim is to help landlords drive rents higher. That is in their own words. They like to claim that they're just making recommendations, but allegations brought against them in complaints filed by states' attorneys general and the United States Attorney General show us that this just isn't true. It is central to their model to make compliance with their rent prices close to mandatory. By design, this product artificially raises rents through illegal price fixing, which is why the U.S. Department of Justice has sued and why we're back with this legislation. Now let's dig into the amendments. I move L5 to the committee report and ask that it be properly displayed.
Amendment L005 has been moved and properly displayed. Representative Mabry to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this is language that we worked on with the Colorado Apartment Association. It clarifies landlord liability in this bill and makes clear that landlords are only liable under this new area of law if they knew or should have known about the collusion. This amendment also requires that circumstances suggest that they were part of a price-fixing scheme. This heightens the evidence required to prove landlord collusion. So we felt like this amendment was proper and important to address concerns of, we heard of landlords coming to us and saying, hey, we use AI for this regular business operation, we use AI to set our books. We want to clarify that this legislation isn't about the use of AI, it is about the use of AI to replace the smoke-filled back room. And this amendment clarifies that by making clear that the liability here is only tied to collusion, which again is already illegal under the Federal Sherman Act. And with that, we ask for an aye vote on L5.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L005? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L005. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Amendment L005 is adopted. Representative Woodrow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L006 and ask that it be properly displayed.
Amendment L005 has been moved and properly displayed. Representative Woodrow to the amendment.
Thank you, members. L005, 6, apologies, specifies that a software provider cannot sell software with the intent that it recommend or set rents for 2 or more landlords, and that the data or analysis is similar for each landlord. Under this amendment, the same algorithmic device, i.e. code, can be used with different data. We ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L006? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L006. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Amendment L006 is adopted. Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to clarify on L006. That actually clarifies and expands what you're able to do if you're a seller of software here. You can sell software that recommends rents so long as there's no collusion. That's just clarification and narrowing this to identify that this is about collusion. So I heard a no vote, but this bill actually, that amendment was actually business friendly. With that, I'll move L7 and ask that it be properly displayed.
Amendment L007 has been moved and properly displayed. Representative Mabry to the amendment.
This is the Zestimate carve-out. We had to deal with Zillow on this bill. If folks have ever Googled their house to see how much their property is appreciated, you probably see on there, they're like, hey, if you wanted to rent out your house, you could get this much. We're just clarifying that Zestimate does not violate the provisions of this bill, and we ask for an aye vote.
Members, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L007. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Amendment L007 is adopted. Representative Woodrow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L008. And humbly request a proper display.
Amendment L008 has been moved and properly displayed. Representative Woodrow to the amendment.
Thank you, members. L008 ensures that this bill adds to antitrust law and does not limit or impair any other provision of state or federal law. Our goal with this was to clarify that this conduct is already unlawful, and we are not seeking to upend antitrust law or jurisprudence in any way. We ask for an aye vote.
Members, is there any further discussion on Amendment L008? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L008. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Amendment L008 is adopted. Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L9 and ask that it be properly displayed.
Amendment L009 has been moved and properly displayed. Representative Mabry to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank our friends with the Colorado Association of Realtors for working with us on this. This just makes sure that the multiple listing service, which is essential to the work that they do, is not caught up in here. I will state that it's both mine and my co-prime's belief that the MLS wasn't covered because I don't think that the MLS leads to collusion or price fixing, but this is a clarification that the realtors wanted, and we were happy to give it to them. And with that, we ask for a yes vote on L9.
Members, is there any further discussion on Amendment L009? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L009. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Amendment L009 is adopted. Representative Woodrow.
We have nothing further on the committee report. Was that the committee report?
Yeah, that's the committee report.
Have we voted on it?
No. We haven't voted on the committee report.
Members, is there any further discussion on the Business and Labor Affairs report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Business Affairs and Labor report as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The Business, Labor, and Affairs Committee report as amended is adopted. Representative Woodrow to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members, for allowing us to get our amendments on. This is a great bill. Thank you to all the stakeholders. Thank you to the dedicated work of my co-prime. Members, market concentration and collusion are decimating workers and folks who are living paycheck to paycheck. In the grand tradition of Teddy Roosevelt, we ask you to engage in some good old-fashioned trust busting. Vote yes on 1004.
Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I just want to highlight, we debate a lot about landlord-tenant bills here in this chamber, and one of the concerns I hear over and over again when people vote against bills that protect tenants is the main concern is that these policies will increase rents. Well, this software that we are targeting is exactly designed to do that. And do not take my words for it. Take RealPage's CEO. RealPage, in its own words, is excited for the rise in rents from an investigation by ProPublica. Never before have we seen these numbers, says Jay Parsons, a vice president of RealPage. Apartment rents recently shot up by as much as 14.5%, he said in a video, touting the company's services. By design, this product that we are targeting artificially raises rents through illegal price fixing, which is why we're seeing lawsuits from both sides of the aisle across this country. Another quote from a RealPage executive, as a property manager, very few of us would be willing to actually raise rents double digits within a single month by doing it manually. This service makes it easier for them to do that. So, I asked my colleagues, do we really care about the rising cost of rent? Or do we want to protect this company's endless profits at any cost? If we want to get serious about reducing rents, this is a step. It is not a silver bullet. There's a lot of work we got to do. I'm proud to be on bills that incentivize the building of more housing. There's a lot we need to do to decrease the cost of rent. But this is a step in the right direction, and proud to ask for a yes vote on 1004.
Representative Armagosh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Another one hearing in committee the argument on this bill was simply free market and competitive market, where anyone in here that drives up and down, say, I-25, you can see gas stations. Gas stations, as you travel along I-25, are usually pretty competitively priced, and they don't do that in any smoke-filled room. I wonder where the smoke is coming from. I'm not sure what we're talking about there. The idea is it's a market where entities are watching each other closely and pricing appropriately for their area, for their market. That's what our free market is that is working. That's what our competitive market is that is working. This is not something that is fixing a problem. It's a solution in search of a problem, which is something we see a lot of in this building. The biggest concern here is this is another opportunity for us to have frivolous litigation against these property owners and padding the pockets of trial lawyers and attorneys representing tenants. I don't think that's appropriate to be doing in this building. I think it's something that we should be taking care of the businesses and letting those businesses either weed themselves out as the bad businesses or progress as the good ones. Let the market work itself out, work those issues out. That's what it's done as long as we've been a free sovereign nation, and that's the way it should stay to be, not being controlled by this kind of legislation or attorneys for that matter. I encourage a no vote.
Representative Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Goodness. As a member of the business community, or the business committee and community, but more specifically to this, the committee, we voted no on this on our side. Understand that that rents have gone up. I don't necessarily believe that it is due to one single app that allows landlords to be able to check the market to see and ensure that they are priced fairly. I think it's just really more a condition of the market. Also keep in mind that this is going after one particular app. There are more than just one particular app. This is singling one out. You're talking about one very small segment that you're trying to fix. I don't really believe that that is how you're going to get to price fixing and collusion from just such a small percentage. Also, I'm a free market guy, and I believe that we should be able to support landlords, mom and pops, to ensure that they are getting what is fair. There's also another algorithmic pricing mechanism called Google. Yeah, I mean, you can look at it. There isn't anything nefarious about this particular pricing mechanism to ensure that mom and pops and to ensure that those that are renting their properties are getting a fair price for it. There's nothing nefarious about it, and there's nothing, there's nothing that prevents anybody from just doing a simple search and being able to find what a fair price is and then pricing their property accordingly. I don't feel like this is necessary, and I would urge a no vote. Thank you.
Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was kind of curious in the introduction from the sponsors, it was mentioned that allegations have been made by states attorney generals and the DOJ, and I have no doubt that's true, but allegations aren't proof, and if allegations have been made, then perhaps there's court cases in the offing that would actually resolve this, and legislation isn't needed. So there's that point that concerns me, but the other being that we just saw something fairly heavily amended, and stakeholding is very important, but it would be great if it actually happened before the bill was put on paper and brought to us in committee. After the fairly substantial amendments that were made on the floor here, as we're being asked to consider the bill in front of a committee that all voted no, and these do address some of those concerns, I move that this bill be moved back to the Business Affairs and Labor Committee for reconsideration.
That is a proper motion. Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, we asked for a no vote on this motion. We have stakeholdered this bill extensively. The reason why we brought the amendments was in response to concerns from people who were either in an amend or opposed position on the bill. We brought almost all of them to neutral with those amendments. And so, yeah, we did bring a lot of amendments, but that's how this job works. It's in response to stakeholder feedback, and we asked for a no.
Representative Barone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also stand to support this motion to move back to committee. The committee needs to hear everything going on again with these amendments going on. And again, this is another bill that's one size fits all. This will affect small businesses. It is a free market. It is one free market. I'm not involved in any of these smoke room deals where these back rooms are, dealing with the pricing on it, pricing on rentals. I'm not involved with any of that. This is going to affect my industry. It's going to affect my business, and I don't think it's fair. So I do approve and I vote on this motion.
Representative Vogt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also support this motion and urge an aye vote. We, as legislators, obviously need to have time to review these materials. We need to do this for our constituents, and I certainly don't feel good about voting on something that we just got amendments onto this bill for my constituents when I really haven't had time to read them and digest them and ask questions about them. So I strongly urge an aye vote. This is what we do as legislators. This is what we should do. We shouldn't have amendments come at the last minute and be forced to quickly vote on something. So I urge an aye vote, and I absolutely support this motion.
Is there any further discussion? Members, the question before us is to refer House Bill 10004 back to the Business Affairs and Labor Committee. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. That motion has failed. Representative Bottoms.
This is making for great daytime television. So let me get this right. Let me understand the bill. We've got two lawyers running a bill to make it easier for lawyers to attack landlords. Insert laugh track here. That's what we're doing here. That's literally what we're doing here. And then they say that these deals are done in smoke-filled rooms. Yeah, and I know what kind of smoke that is to make this kind of bill feasible. This is bad bill. This just attacks landlords. We keep going after landlords, which drives the cost of housing up. People can't afford it. When you go after landlords, you're going after the tenants. You're not going after the landlords. But we can't seem to figure that out in this room. You're going after the landlords. It's going to drive cost up. People can't get in homes. Then we have higher rates of homelessness. And then we circle back around and say that's a landlord's fault. This is circular reasoning that really makes no sense unless you're literally trying to destroy the housing market. Then I guess it makes sense. But it doesn't make sense if you're trying to help anybody under any circumstance. This is a bad bill. Please vote no.
Representative Marshall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's always an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you.
I was sitting back there listening to some of the conversations, and as some of my colleagues who brought this bill knew, the way to get me to get on board with it was the antitrust argument. I voted against most of these landlord-tenant bills that have come because I do think they were overly restrictive to the landlords. This, however, is an antitrust issue. It is an antitrust issue. And people who are behind free markets support antitrust litigation. And guess what? Who does antitrust litigation? The lawyers. Lawyers are the ones who keep the free market operating. You may think it's not true, but it is true. There was the famous conversation between Mao Zedong and Kissinger, who pointed out that we have far more lawyers in the United States at one time than we had soldiers, and the Chinese had far more soldiers than lawyers. And Deng Xiaoping said it will be a great day in China when we have more lawyers than we have soldiers. So the attacks on our colleagues because they're attorneys working on antitrust stuff falls very strangely not hitting the target at all. And when we keep talking about a free market, real estate has always historically been one of the least free markets around. With all the zoning, with all the laws on it, it's very difficult to do anything with your property. And I know we want to get there, but that's not where we are. Those of you who keep, we idolize our founding fathers. One of the greatest things Thomas Jefferson ever did was get rid of entailment, where dead people could lock up property forever. A free market hasn't existed, and this pricing coordination makes it worse. When they say that agreements are being done in the cloud now rather than a smoky room, they're not wrong. This is non-public private information that the landlords are submitting into the cloud to algorithms that make that pricing coordination, conspiring against the public. It's Sherman Act Antitrust 101, and we should all vote for this. Thank you.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did not hear this bill in committee, and I'm just wondering if you guys can help me understand why antitrust law that is currently in place is insufficient. I also want to understand why, if there is concern about having these conversations, exempting a public group like Zillow doesn't add into the problem as opposed to take away from it. Because to me, it seems as if that is a very open stance of what the price should be at, and presumably people can then use that data to engage in whatever you're claiming they're engaging in. So if you can help me understand why the disparate treatment of that particular entity and why we're not currently protected by antitrust laws, I'd appreciate it.
Representative Woodrow.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Luck, for the questions. Current law does prohibit the use of these algorithms. Antitrust lawsuits are extraordinarily complex. They take teams and teams of attorneys to prosecute, and sometimes over decades to actually resolve, even get to trial. It is for that reason that we want legislation prohibiting the use and sale and dissemination of these algorithms, because we don't have decades to wait. Tenants need relief now. They need this price fixing to stop immediately. With respect to Zillow, what Rep. Mayberry was saying with the amendment is that it exempts products like Zillow, products like a Z-estimate. It's not specific to one company. And I want to be clear that the bill is not specific to RealPage. There are other companies that do this, and their products would be considered unlawful as well. We have to get back to the place where we agree that competitors need to compete. And the most important term that competitors have to compete on is price. And when competitors get together and share data and agree to restrict their supply in such a way as to coordinate on price, that violates our antitrust laws, both state and federal. But we can't wait for these lawsuits to resolve before making sure that actors in our marketplace now stop using them. That's the urgency behind the legislation. And so yes, it is currently unlawful. We could sit back, put our feet up, and wait another decade while tenants get built for an extra month's rent every year. Or we can do something now and say, stop doing this and make things more affordable for Coloradans. That's the point.
Representative Mayberry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I might be addressing the reason why you raised your hand, because your second question wasn't answered. What is the difference between this and what Zillow or companies like Zillow are actually doing? The difference is with this, it's a product that you pay for, and you upload data on the actual contracts that you make with landlords or with tenants. And so what's happening is this is software that allows people to say, hey, in this zip code with this many bedrooms, this many bathrooms, this is what I was able to charge. And then RealPage uploads all that information, and then they share that competitor data with people who should be competing with them in the market to undercut them. But it says, hey, you don't have to cut the price down. This person charged this. You know now what they charged on every transaction. You have their private information. And so the difference is with Zillow, it's publicly available, it's free, and it's not based on somebody's actual data that reflects the transactions that they have. And that is ultimately what was at the heart of antitrust law, right? And making sure that we have these sorts of regulations to make sure that our economy is competitive so that consumers are on a level playing field, right? So that one side of the supply and demand curve can't all get together and say, hey, you know, housing is scarce, let's all charge $2,000 a month. And if nobody's undercutting us, then that's what people are gonna pay. And so that's the difference, is on Zillow, none of that other stuff happens. It's just an estimate, a suggestion. It's not based on any data that anybody puts in, and you don't have to pay to access it. And it's not as specific.
Representative Luck?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for that. So if the concern is that we have these protections already in place, but they're ineffective because the access to justice is not quick, it's not swift, then why not start to address the access to justice questions and improve our courts such that it actually becomes swift and available, as opposed to adding more regulations that have whatever potential consequence? That's one part. The second part is as relates to Zillow and the like, these kinds of services that, to your point, are free and publicly available. Therefore, there's a transparency to them that I'm assuming RealPage doesn't have, or companies like that, because you have to pay for that service. But if I'm hearing you right, are these, is the argument that these landlords actually are coming together in a knowing way, meaning like I know X person and X person, we all sit down over coffee and have these conversations, or I'm sorry if you guys already spoke to this particularly. I was trying to it's knowing. Okay, so but that doesn't then preclude them from using Zillow-like estimates as their foundation for that conversation, such that you still have the problem, the same problem that you're wanting to address. And so help me understand why this is the solve to a problem. That's what I'm trying to grapple, and I don't mean to frustrate you guys, but I'm really trying to get my head around how this works.
Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to the first question was, why don't we, isn't this just an access to justice issue? Well, I would rather here in the state of Colorado say, no, we do not want a company to come here and openly brag about price fixing and allow them to continue to do their businesses. We see this as this could incentivize them to change their business practices. Their executives are out there bragging that their product allows landlords to increase rents. It's not the only product that they offer, but one of their products allows them to increase rents above what the market would normally bear. They brag about that. And so I think it's important for us to say, as a state, that is unacceptable here in Colorado. We're not going to wait for the lawsuits. We need this practice to change in our state right now. To the second point, you know, what you've described with Zillow isn't actually the problem that we're trying to address. It's fine that there are estimates out there. It's fine that somebody could get a recommendation on what rent they should charge. The problem that we're trying to solve isn't that people are getting recommendations. The problem that we're trying to solve is that the recommendations are part of a scheme that replaces that smoke-filled back room that Teddy Roosevelt contemplated at the turn of the century with an algorithm, which is why our amendment very specifically, and we worked on it with the Apartment Association, very specifically states that the circumstances must suggest that the landlord knew that this was part of a scheme. That's the standard that this puts on landlords, that they have to know that they were cheating if they're going to be sued. under this. That's the landlord standard that we're putting here because we're not targeting landlords. We're targeting the company that is doing this. And so the standard is different for the company. It isn't that high of a bar, but working with the landlords to address the concern that, oh, somebody might accidentally get caught up in this. No, we put in there that circumstances suggest that they knowingly participated in a scheme. And that's the difference between Zillow and a rent recommendation in this is that's not knowingly participating in a scheme.
Representative Woodrow.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Luck. I think what some of the questions are revealing is a fundamental misunderstanding of antitrust law. Competitors aren't allowed to discuss price at coffee, in a back room, or on software that they both pay for. These algorithms impose something in antitrust circles known as price discipline. We heard about gas prices before. OPEC is one of the world's best-known cartels. The countries in OPEC, the participants, get together and they set price. Now, they don't sit in a room and say, what are you going to charge per barrel? What they say is, let's all agree on how much we're going to produce each month. They restrict supply. And all of you know from Econ 101 that when you restrict supply, price goes up. How do these algorithms work? They take proprietary data from competitors regarding vacancy rates and rental amounts. And what they do is they coordinate and they tell a recommendation that says you should charge X amount for X period of time. Because we know what the market looks like in 12 months, in 18 months, in 24 months, and we can flatten out those vacancy rates. What does a flattened vacancy rate mean? Restricted supply. What is restricted supply? Higher price. How do you get cartels to act right? You get them to cheat on each other. You foment distrust. You go to OPEC, you go to Venezuela, and you say, do you know what the Saudis actually produced last month? They told you something, but they actually produced X 100,000 barrels of oil on the side and didn't tell you about it. You should not be part of this agreement. It is counterproductive to your own self-interest. It only works if your competitors are in on the scheme with you. What these algorithms do so effectively is they impose price discipline. They say at the outset when you're paying for it, if you want it to work, you have to agree with our recommendation 80% of the time. And then those competitors actually send around their inputs and collude double. And what have we seen? Restricted supply and increased rents. And so yes, temporarily in Denver, we've known for about a year and a half that we were going to have a glut because we had so many permits issued a few years ago. And we know that that glut is coming up. It's over. And what are we going to have? We're going to have the supply that we have slowly increasing due to some of the policies that we're trying to pass here, but we're going to have the supply that we have with a marketplace filled with folks who are still colluding when they should be competing. And that's what we're trying to break up. And that's the importance. Thanks.
Representative Bradley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for the sponsors. Wouldn't it be colluding then to get a $14 million lawsuit to represent tenants and pass legislations to go against landlords?
Representative Woodrow.
Thank you for the question, Representative Bradley, and I would appreciate, refraining from personal attacks. My lawsuit against landlords was under the breach of the warranty of habitability, a bill that I did not run or sponsor, and on breach of contract, which has been the law for most Western civilizations since the Norman Conquest. Common law. Those were the claims. I've not brought an antitrust suit. I have not sued under this. And I would ask, how many of you are property owners that you don't take 21Cs on, yet you vote on landlord-tenant legislation? So before you point the finger, just remember there's several looking back at you.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Going back, so I understand antitrust. What I don't understand is how this actually solves the problem. two reasons. One, you're still providing an opportunity for them to use the justice system, which you're saying is not sufficient to address, right? We already have all of these laws. I'm getting a big, deep breath. So maybe we'll start there. Why adding an additional law and an additional cause of action, why that's going to be sufficient, why that's going to go through faster? Is it just the threat of it to the degree that right now you don't feel like the current antitrust has enough teeth?
Representative Mabry.
Come up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, respectfully, as with every piece of legislation we run, I wish they were all magic wands that overnight fix the problem that we're trying to address. Unfortunately, with every single thing we debate in here, there is implementation. And this is going to have to be implemented and enforced. I expect the Attorney General will use this as a tool. Again, there's ongoing litigation, but you answered your own question in a way I agree with you that a big part of this is incentive on people to change behavior. So we want this to be a tool for law enforcement like the Attorney General to use against companies who are preying against Colorado consumers, and consumer protection attorneys to use as a tool to protect consumers who are getting screwed because of this product that, again, the CEO openly brags is helping them artificially drive up the cost of rent. So to answer the question, it's tools in the toolbox, and yeah, hopefully by putting more tools in the toolbox, we can disincentivize bad behavior.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that. There was a comment made about glut in the Denver market. Is that a reference to the fact that Denver rents have gone down 2% over the last? Is that what we're pointing to from your perspective? That is the explanation for that particular decline, and so the thought is that this will continue to increase because of this particular. Okay, thank you.
Representative Bradley.
Cartels, collusion, magic wands, oh my. Let's just talk about the magic wand that has been waved already. Rent costs dropped about 2% in Denver last year. Eviction cases in Denver court hit all-time highs in 2024. Can't imagine why. Eviction cases in Denver court hit all-time highs 2024. Apartment rent in Metro Denver held mostly steady in 2024. The median cost of an apartment dropped about 2% over the course of the year, a savings of about $35 a month. In all, you could expect to pay about $1,700 for a typical unit at the end of 2024, according to data from the Apartment Association of Metro Denver. Housing is getting cheaper, in part because there's much more of it. Developers built about 20,000 new apartments around the metro area in 2024. That's compared to about 13,000 the year before. Meanwhile, it's getting easier to find an empty apartment. No way. Nearly 7% of Metro Denver apartments, roughly 30,000 were vacant last quarter, 30,000 vacancies last quarter. So I'm sure landlords are colluding to make rent high when they have 30,000 rentals sitting vacant on the market. Denver saw the most empty units. All but 2 submarkets saw drops in rent. Studios are the hardest to market units in the market, with 9.3% of them empty. 2 bedrooms are the most popular, with only 6.3% sitting empty. Construction built since 2020 has the highest vacancy rate, though the trend of higher vacancies hit all ages of properties in the metro. The high vacancy rate seen in the last quarter of 2024 reflects a seasonal trend. In winter, the market typically slows, and vacant units are not typically going unused. They're just waiting for their next tenant. If a unit stays vacant for too long, the landlord may drop prices. So 30,000 vacancies, and we're saying they're all colluding to set rent prices high. Now, does that sound like good small business ownership? It doesn't. According to the Apartment Association of Metro Denver, the last quarter was the softest on record, meaning that supply is exceeding demand. Last year, Denver County Court saw 16,000 eviction cases filed, far higher than any year on record. The first 2 weeks of January already saw 800 eviction cases filed in court. So I'm asking you, if there's 30,000 apartments sitting empty, do we think landlords are colluding together to skyrocket rent prices so that they continue to sit empty? No, but two eviction lawyers would tell you different. Vote no on this bill.
Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I always have an issue when I get caught off guard by impugning motives. I assure you that attorneys that represent people in the eviction space have some knowledge about how to deal with evictions and what is happening with regards to rents. Now, in my district, I don't think there is a more important thing that I need to deal with in this chamber than housing. We have very expensive houses because the property values have risen and risen and risen next door to very expensive apartments. And while I can appreciate the 2% drop down to $1,700 a month, that is the equivalent of owning a $350,000 house. But in my district, the average rent is $2,500 a month, the ownership of which would get you a $400,000 home. And there's no way out of that trap, because you can't buy a $400,000 house in my district. They don't exist. I don't have middle housing available for people. There's not something for them to buy. And when we're talking about apartments in my district that cost $2,500 a month, I am not talking about granite countertops. I'm talking about an apartment. And people having places to live. Now, I suppose you say that they could just move. Maybe they can live in Erie. The issue that I have in my district with housing, and this is not on the back of landlords. I'm not berating landlords here. Landlords are in business. We've had construction defects issues that have caused condominiums not to be built. We don't have ownable housing available, and what we do have are very expensive apartments next to very expensive houses. It's a housing situation that cannot balance, and it does not work, and it does not work long term. If somebody graduates from Cherry Creek High School in my district, they do not get to live in my district. They have to move. My cross-street neighbor, a few houses up, lives in a 5-bedroom home by herself. Her bedroom is on the first floor in what used to be her dining room because she can't go up and down the stairs, and she cannot sell her home at its newly inflated value and even downsize to an appropriate size house for her if she stays in the community that she's lived in for the last 55 years. I don't know if it's 55 years. I made that number up if you find my neighbor. I appreciate the dialogue and the impugned motives, but the responsibility of this chamber is that we help to find balance in housing. And it doesn't mean that we don't want landlords to be in the business to make money. We need them to build housing. We need landlords. We don't need landlords that do the same thing that we're talking about here with impugned motives, where their job is just to keep going up and up and up and up and up. A 2% drop between completely inflated rents and rents that have used software to make sure that they get to just the right algorithm to make sure that the rents keep them as profitable as possible, seems like good business, but it also creates a housing imbalance that we have to fix. And we have to give the tools to the local governments to be able to do that, and we have to be able to regulate this marketplace in such a way that we remember that what we are talking about here is people's place to live. Please stop impugning motives.
Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. software I think that's being described is a tool that's used by landlords to make their job a little simpler, not to try to gouge people. We've heard that there's already laws against collusion. I'm not sure why those aren't just used. We've heard that rent prices are starting to come down, so perhaps waiting for the courts to decide something isn't a problem. But one of the sponsors had mentioned folks that were gleefully saying, this is what I was able to charge. What I was able to charge is the other side of the equation of this is what I was willing to pay. That's the free market at work. If we're talking about reduction in supply, that middle market is very important. But people can't just move to Erie to buy a $400,000 home. The median price is $722,000. If you're paying rent that was equivalent to a $400,000 mortgage payment, it's because there aren't $400,000 homes available. There aren't 600, or in most cases, you're getting into the $600,000 and $700,000. It's just, that's what the market is driving. People can't afford to buy $700,000 homes, so they're having to find what would be the equivalent of a $400,000 or $350,000 a year home in apartment rent. We have done so much in this building to screw up the free market and cause prices to escalate that we just need to stop. There's 19 bills this year that affect landlords and housing costs, and none of them are going to make it cheaper to live in an apartment or to construct a home. We need to stop. Just stop. This is one we can stop. Just vote no on this.
Representative Bradley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I must have heard the last representative say impugning motives no short of 10 times. When you have bill sponsors that are pro-tenant and run legislation, I am speaking truth. There was no impugning motives. Thank you.
Hey, Representative Kelty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I'm sitting here, I wasn't going to say much, but as I'm saying, I know I'm the freshman, but I sat in on many committees, and one of the committees, obviously, I sat in was for a bill that I ran for anti-squatters. I wanted to make it so where we, had something that protected landlords and property owners from people, serial squatters. And during that, regarding this bill, and actually the sponsor of the bill had mentioned many times that my bill for the anti-squatter didn't make sense because rent in Colorado was coming down. But yet today, I'm hearing that rent is going up, and this bill here is necessary because the rents are going up. So either rents are coming down or rents are going up in Colorado. This is where I have a hard time with this because it's got to be one way or the other. It can't be one way for one bill and something else for another bill just because you want to get it passed. So I'm really confused on whether it's going up or going down. But for me, there's a lot of, to me, it seems like hypocrisy. But yeah, I don't think this bill is needed. We need to start doing more for landlords so they can actually have better control of their properties. Thank you.
Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rents over the past 10 years have skyrocketed in the Denver metro. Everybody would agree to that. If you looked at what you were paying for a one-bedroom in Denver and Aurora and Greeley in 2017 versus now, it is so much more. Last year happened to be the first year that rents went down a little bit, 2-3%. That is nowhere near reflective. That does not erase the skyrocket that happened between 2015 and 2025. So working people are spending more and more of their hard-earned money just to remain housed. 60% of our country lives paycheck to paycheck. A huge portion of renters are housing cost burdened, according to HUD. And this company, their CEO, bragged about driving rent prices up. They said this is the appeal of their product. That's their words. They bragged that their product artificially drove prices up. And so there are a lot of things that went to the increasing cost of rent over the past 10 years. Is this the only thing? No. Supply and demand is part of it. There hadn't been enough housing being built. A lot of people are moving to Colorado. But price fixing and price gouging is also another part of it. And I also just want to be clear about something. We hear a lot about how landlords are overregulated. We hear a lot about landlords being overregulated here. But I think that narrative is ridiculous. Your landlord can raise your rent by as much as they want every single year. We just heard another representative come down here and say that evictions are at all-time highs. We passed no legislation here that limits your ability to evict people if they're behind on their rent or if they violated their lease. We're talking about people's homes. We're talking about being on the side of people who cannot afford to own, the people who are living paycheck to paycheck. Nobody said landlords are bad, but I've seen no evidence that landlords are earning less money this year than they were last year. When you're a landlord, that's a bonus. That means you have an extra asset to leverage. What we're talking about is people who are incredibly poor, who live paycheck to paycheck. Again, we pass no laws that impact the ability of landlords to charge whatever they want for rent. I support legislation to do that, but we haven't passed any legislation that limits what landlords can charge for rent. Having an extra property that generates extra income puts landlords in a different financial position than those who live paycheck to paycheck and have no assets. We need to make sure that we're doing enough to help the poorest people in our state. And so I'm glad that rent 1 year went down 3%. It did not erase the skyrocketing impact of rent going up over the previous decade in a way that left more of our renters more housing cost burdened. And so there's no hypocrisy in a decade of rent skyrocketing and 1 year of them going down slightly. Those are just the facts.
Representative Barone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Going back to what was said here, you're bringing up facts for 10 years. 10 years, anything could be blown out of proportion in 10 years. And let's not forget, right in the middle of those 10 years, what happened? The COVID years. Everybody was suffering during those years. So the data going from before COVID and after COVID is not very factual. It's not very precise to be able to add those years that everybody suffered, every industry suffered. You can't really put that into context in this explanation. This is one of 19 bills coming through this chamber this year attacking landlords. This is, like I said before, this is another one-size-fits-all regulation, legislation for the whole state, when one of the arguments, which I believe is not even that much of an argument, is just the Denver metro area's problem. But you're trying to regulate for the entire state, which it's not really a problem in my district. It's not really a problem in my business. I don't overcharge rent. The way I considered my rent is what I owe on the house, plus a little bit more for incidentals. Something that I am responsible for. The home, my property, which I give a service to somebody. Whether whatever reason they can't buy their own home, they can't qualify for a mortgage, I give that service for them to rent my property, which I am responsible for. One size fits all regulation rarely works. For that reason, I make a motion to move this bill to the Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee, where it should be presented in front of that person, in front of that committee.
That is a proper motion. Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, we're on year 2 of debating this bill. We've brought numerous amendments, again, getting most of the people who actively oppose this legislation to neutral. There's no reason to send this back to another committee. We'd be wasting our time. What we're talking about is passing legislation that takes on the bad practices of a company that a CEO bragged about, artificially drove up the prices of rent. This bill is narrow, simple. I hear a lot of talk about landlords. We have made very clear in this bill that it doesn't apply to landlords who are not knowingly participating in a price-fixing scheme. So if multiple people have come up, said they're landlords, what about landlords? Well, if you're not knowingly price-fixing, the bill doesn't apply to you. This is mainly about the practices of some tech companies. And so this has been thoroughly vetted through one committee. We just brought a lot of amendments. It's going to go through committee in the Senate. I think it's improper to send this back to, or send this to THLG, and we'll ask for a no on this motion.
Representative Barone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The reason I want to move this to the Transportation and Housing Local Government Committee is because of the amendments. We want to hear those stakeholders that went back to neutral. We want to hear from them in committee. It was said that it doesn't attack landlords that are not only doing this price gouging, but it indirectly attacks landlords. It indirectly attacks me. I make this motion because of that reason. We need to hear it again in committee because of the amendments presented today. We want to hear it from those stakeholders. We want to hear it from the people that are going to testify for or against this bill. I urge and I vote.
Representative Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know it was mentioned by one of the bill sponsors that some of us might have rental properties. I do not. I'll just state that for the record. And in fact, I owned a property management business, and I sold it. One of the main reasons is because all the legislation that comes out of this building that hurts small business owners like it hurt me. We hear this over and over again. Oh, this person did this, or this one company did this. One bad actor, and we punish everyone for it. Everyone that was in that business. We just punish all of them because one bad actor. We talk about rent in here and that these landlords are increasing rent too much. The market dictates the rent. No landlord in their right mind is going to have rent so high they can't get a tenant in there. That is a bad business practice. You're going to go out of business. It's the market. The market dictates the rent. If it's too much, the houses or units sit vacant. And then that person's not making any money, that landlord. If it's too much and the tenants try to rent and they get in there, oftentimes evictions like we've talked about. And the reality is landlords don't want evictions. They want rent coming in so they make money. Those evictions take time and money and cause stress, guaranteed. Landlords want certainty. They don't want costly evictions. They want certainty. They want that rent coming in. They want tenants that can pay the rent. The market dictates it. And you know what else dictates it? 485 pages in this book that talk about laws that have been passed here over the last handful, few years, over and over again. And those laws put regulation on these small business owners, and the rents go up. This bill is not going to decrease rent for tenants. I don't believe it. I don't believe, with due respect to the co-sponsors, that trial lawyers are going to lower rent in this state. I'm sorry, it's not happening. I urge a no vote on this bill.
Representative Richardson.
It was mentioned a bit ago about rent skyrocketing over the last 10 years. You have to go back a little more than 10 years to get to the first set of construction defect laws that were passed. It was about 10 years prior to that. For anybody that's been involved in development, that takes a long time. 10 years is about the time after construction defect laws passed that it took for the that condo market to disappear. That pipeline was built out. Approvals that had been given by local governments years and years before had been constructed, and then that construction ended around 2014. Condos, cheap houses, starter homes that they represented were no longer available. And for the last 10 years, those folks that want to get out of renting and into starter homes had no choice, no place to go other than far, 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 far away from any metro area, and then be far, far, far away from any potential to earn a living for most of them, unless they were going to buy a ranch or a farm, and you can't do that cheaply either at all. It is construction defect. It is the death of the starter home, middle cost home industry that has led to the skyrocketing in rents, because people can't jump from their first job to a $600,000 home. They have to rent. Apartments have been building out. We've seen that. Apartments have actually reached kind of parity of supply and demand. That's why we're starting to see prices come down a tick. As much as anybody would like, no. But that's what the market dictates. We can't keep laying the blame on high costs on people that are trying to do business. They're not raising the prices just to make money. There's not many among us here that I've seen that have rental properties that are rolling in dough. This is just, we're continuing to look for enemies. We're continuing to look for people to punish just so folks who are struggling feel like we're doing something for them. But in the long run, we're continuing to hurt them. So this, again, is a bill that needs to die. But having said all that, Madam Chair, I think there was a motion on the table we never voted on.
Yes. Members, the motion before us is to refer House Bill 10004 back to the Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. That motion failed. Members, is there any further discussion on House Bill 10004? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 10004. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. House Bill 10004 is adopted. Mr. Sheba, please read House Bill 25-1285.
House Bill 1285 by Representative McCormick, also Senators Kipp and Pelton B, concerning the veterinary workforce and in connection therewith establishing requirements for the practice of veterinary medicine by veterinary professional associates.
Representative McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1285 and the Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee report.
To the committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, in the committee report, we did a lot of great work. We had quite a bit of feedback from lots of folks in this space, and were presented with about 10 different items in the introduced bill that were either of concern or potential conflicts. And in committee, we brought quite a few amendments to address every single one of those concerns. And so the bill was well worked in committee, and in fact came out of committee with an 11-to-1 bipartisan vote. Super excited about that work, and I urge an aye vote. Wait, actually, I have an amendment. So let's don't do that yet. I move L008 to the Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee report and ask that it be properly displayed.
The amendment has been moved and properly displayed. To the amendment, Representative McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. L008 addresses another issue that we wanted to clear up on the bill that allows for the new veterinary professional associate to have the ability to work towards indirect supervision requirements. And it does that this amendment does that in a couple of places. And just for clarification, there are 3 levels of supervision that are already in statute for any veterinary professional. One is immediate supervision, which means you're in the room and you can see or hear the person that you are supervising. The next level is direct supervision, which means you're in the building and readily available, but not necessarily watching or listening to what's happening. And the third level is indirect supervision, which means you're still supervising that person, but you're probably not on the premises or in the building. So this amendment allows for that pathway for this new veterinary professional associate to have the ability to work towards indirect supervision, and I ask for an aye vote on L008.
Members, is there any further discussion on Amendment L008? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L008. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, no. Amendment L008 is adopted. Members, can we keep it down just a little bit? It's getting really loud in here. Representative McCormick, to the committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L009 to the Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee report and ask that it be properly displayed.
Amendment L009 has been moved and properly displayed. Representative McCormick, to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment, during committee, when we had set up that pathway to indirect supervision, we had the ability for the Board of Veterinary Medicine to kind of write the specifics on how that would be done. For instance, the number of hours, et cetera. The board has all the purview to write the details on that. And we had a second part in there that said that as long as the veterinarian had kind of the last say on going towards indirect discretion, we are removing that part in conversation with our colleagues up at the university to just make it really clear that that ability to get to indirect supervision will be allowed, and the Board of Veterinary Medicine kind of has the full purview on how that's to be done. So we are in good faith bringing this amendment here today to remove that kind of backstop that the veterinarian had to allow that pathway to indirect with the board's writing of the specifics in there. And I ask for an aye vote on L009.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L009? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L009. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Amendment L009 is adopted. To the committee report, Representative McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I urge an aye vote on the committee report as amended.
Is there any further discussion on the Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Agricultural, Water, and Natural Resources report as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources report as adopted is amended as adopted is passed. Sorry. To the bill. Representative McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So now we're to the bill. So you all know with the passage of Proposition 129, which was on everyone's ballot in November, the state of Colorado will become the first in the nation, and in fact the first on planet Earth, to create a brand new position in the veterinary workforce. And this new position is called the Veterinary Professional Associate. Our state is now tasked with setting up this position, and it is incumbent on all of us, the university who is setting up the program, the State Board of Veterinary Medicine under DORA, and this body, the state legislature, for each of us to do our part to set the stage for a successful and solidly constructed framework for the VPA to enter into the profession. And we each have a very important yet separate role in the process. And I won't go through all the different things that all the different parties are doing, but as far as our body, the state legislature, we have a responsibility to the voters in this process to supplement as needed with clear guidelines to align this new position in statute with at least the minimum level of what we have for our registered vet techs, our vet tech specialists, and our DVMs that the board will need to follow. And so each of these inputs to the state board are essential, and the state board needs these tools for the complete success of the VPA. So another thing that you might be hearing is, why don't we wait and do this later? And I want you to understand why it's important to do this bill this year. The statutory language that went with 129 was written over a full year ago, and since then we've passed two pretty substantial parts to the Veterinary Practice Act that 129 did not contemplate. And so in one of those bills, we expanded the scope of practice for our vet tech specialists and our registered vet techs with a very detailed team relationship of all these veterinary professionals that brought the regulation of the veterinary professionals to a new gold standard in our state and across the nation. And the new veterinary professional associate deserves the same level of importance in clarity and transparency in statute that we have lifted up our registered vet techs, our vet tech specialists, and our veterinarians. The VPA deserves that same level of attention that those other veterinary professionals have. And the guidelines in this bill, in 1285, will facilitate the successful and smooth entry of the VPA into the profession by adding them now, before the rules are finalized and before the first student graduates. And the deadline for those rules to be completed is next January 2026. So this is actually the perfect time to pass this bill. The VPA, this bill does not touch on the scope of practice for the VPA. That is completely the purview of the veterinary board. And the VPA will be able to practice medicine as determined by the board. Again, this bill does not address anything having to do with scope of practice. I want to assure everybody in this room and everyone listening that there's nothing in this bill that conflicts with what was in Prop 129 or the will of the voters. In fact, all the feedback we have received and the many amendments that we have brought are in response to those voices, and I want to make sure that that intention is crystal clear here today. We are all rowing in the same direction to make sure there is a successful launch of this position, and especially as a former business owner and employer, it's really important for the veterinarians, the vet techs, the vet tech specialists of our state, and all the other people that work on a veterinary team have this bill in place so that the board can have all the tools they need to implement this and to make the reception of the VPA with open arms for potential employers out there. We're going to have students graduating with a pretty good level of debt with their master's degree, and it's really important that they have employers out there that are ready to receive them, hire them, and get them working in a way that works for the entire veterinary team. The entire country is looking at Colorado as the original and as the leader, the trademark mold for the Veterinary Professional Associate. I think that we need to give the board this assignment and all the attention it deserves now to give the state board the information they need. The people and the animals of Colorado are depending on us, and I am also very, very proud to have Representative Johnson join me as a prime sponsor of this bill. She was a great supporter in committee, and I know she understands the importance of this bill. So I'll leave it at that.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my good co-sponsor for leading the efforts on this. We've heard many debates, both on Proposition 129 and how's that rollout going to happen. I know in rural Colorado, the angst is what next? The people said establish this program, and that's exactly what's being done. This is putting the statutory structure in place along with the board's recommendation so we can work together moving forward as one. Just like my good co-sponsor said, we want to ensure that students who are spending thousands of dollars to go through this program have a set job when they graduate. This bill will make sure that veterinarians are hiring and working with these veterinary professional associates so they can be successful in their careers, and so we can do what the will of the people wanted, but making sure we're doing it in a smooth path forward together.
Representative McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do have one last amendment. I move L007 to House Bill 1285 and ask that it be displayed.
Amendment L07 has been moved and properly displayed. Representative McCormick to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment we're bringing also in good faith in conversations with concerns about having language in this bill that discusses the veterinarian client-patient relationship, which many of you might have heard about the VCPR. I know we love acronyms in this building. Well, we also love them in veterinary medicine. So this amendment takes out reference to the veterinarian client-patient relationship in this bill. There's a couple of sentences that says that only the veterinarian can create the VCPR. We are removing that from this bill, again, in good faith in our conversations with stakeholders, and I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L007? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L007. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
those opposed, no. Amendment L07 is adopted. Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1285? Seeing none, the question before Representative Armagas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Many of you probably know I brought the bill that turned into Prop 129 forward 2 years ago. That bill was killed in the committee chaired by bill sponsor. Then this became a ballot measure last year. In between that time, I had a lot of working with Colorado State University, who is regionally arguably the best veterinary school around. So all of the work that they've been putting into this curriculum to make this master's program for the VPA was definitely something that should not go unnoticed and should not be undermined. And I think in saying that there's not anything undermining, if you're looking at who supports and opposes this on the Secretary of State website, CSU is one of those that is in an opposed position. So in talking to Temple Grandin and all the people that I've spoken to at CSU in this space, they do have a very strong board of people that are going together and putting the curriculum together to get people certified to do what the voters willed for this mid-level position of EPA to be created and supported as something to move forward in. I think obviously this is a popular issue. It passed on the ballot and became law. So we do have this position going forward, and I would have to argue that there is definitely still efforts to undermine what the school and what the people behind this are trying to do. I think this is not the direction we need to go. We need to rely on the people that are doing this work on the ground at CSU and around that space, not making it out of this building. So I encourage a no vote on this bill.
Members, is there any further discussion on House Bill 1285? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1285 as amended. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. House Bill 1285 as amended is adopted. Mr. Shebo, please read the title of House Bill 1213.
House Bill 1213 by Representative Ferre, also Senator Doherty, concerning changes to the medical assistance program.
Representative Ferre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1213 and the Health and Human Service Committee report. And the Appropriations Committee report.
To the committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So these amendments, they adjust the statute placement. They fix some language in the bill to ensure clarity and reducing the fiscal note. And they also fix the language of another bill that happened from last year. So we're just cleaning that up as well. And I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Health and Human Service and just, okay. Sorry, is there any further discussion on the appropriations report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the appropriations report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The appropriations report is adopted. Representative Ferre to the Health and Human Services report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this also is just adjusting some of the language to make sure there's some clarity, make sure that HCPF is able to implement it and implement it timely, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Health and Human Services Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Health and Human Services Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The Health and Human Services Committee report is adopted. Representative Ferre to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this bill I created through the help of some of the providers that give help and care to all of the Medicaid clients. One of the things that is disappointing is that we can't pay providers enough for the care that they're giving, especially to our most vulnerable population. So I asked around in the community, say, what do you want in terms of help and support that the legislator can give? And this is some of the suggestions that they gave for that support. Clarity around billing. Clarity around payment times, reducing some administrative burdens and hurdles in terms of paperwork, reducing the amount of care plan requirements and signatures. It's a lot of red tape, but it saves a lot of time on the ground, and I ask for your support. Additionally, it saves us some money, and it saves all of us time, and I appreciate your support on this bill.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1213? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1213. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. House Bill 1213 is adopted. Mr. Shebo, please read the title of House Bill 1245.
House Bill 1245 by Representatives Leader and Hamrick concerning HVAC infrastructure improvement projects in schools.
Nick is supposed to be down here taking our picture.
Who's going? Representative Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the House Bill 25-1245 and the Business and Labor Committee report.
To the committee report, Rep. Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did a strike below, which clarifies the standards established in the bill. It only applies to those applicants who utilize the IIJA state matching funds and add school districts to the available recipients of the IIJA cash fund dollars. Also removes the CO2 monitors from the bill. It no longer requires LEPs to report to CDEs. And it only asks CDE to publish a list of certified contractors and to use this information in any marketing materials for infrastructure updated opportunities they may distribute, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Business and Labor Affairs Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is adoption of the Business Affairs. Oh, sorry.
No, they don't.
Do you have an amendment?
No, that's mine. It's to the report. Oh, it's, okay. I thought it was
Is it to the report or to the bill?
Okay, my mistake. I thought it was to the bill. Okay. Okay, on second readings, we did an amendment, L002, to clarify that a local education provider...
1 second, Leader.
Huh?
The committee will go to a brief recess.
Okay.
The committee will come back to order. Representative Leader.
Thank you. My bad. It amends the Business and Labor and Affairs Committee report. So basically what this does is I move L002.
1 second, Leader. You have to move it.
I move L002 to the Business and Labor Committee report. 4. I move L004 to the committee report.
1 second, please.
You know, I should put 2 on here, that's why.
Leader.
It's L004. I already moved it.
Amendment L004 has been moved and properly displayed. Representative
Properly
Leader to the
displayed.
amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All this does is it clarifies that a local education provider whose application for federal funds utilizes the IIJA cash fund as matching funds must comply with the labor standards requirements of the bill. It specifically, the amendment clarifies that the grant agreement includes references to required labor standards, and at the end of the project, the local education provider confirms with the governor's office, who is the administrator of the IIJA cash fund, that the project complied with labor standard requirement. So what this amendment is, it has no fiscal impact, and it was requested by the governor's office to clarify the use of labor standards as a requirement of utilizing the IIJA cash fund for HVAC improvements. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L004? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L004. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Amendment L004 is adopted. To the committee report.
Okay, in the Business and Labor Committee, we did a strike below that clarifies the standards established in the bill only apply to those applicants who utilize the IIJA state matching funds and add school districts to the available recipient of the IIJA cash fund dollars. It removes the CO2 monitors from the bill, and it no longer requires the LEPs to report to CDE, and only asks CDE to publish a list of certified contractors and to use the information in a marketing material for infrastructure updated opportunities they may distribute. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Business Affairs and Labor Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Business Affairs and Labor report as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The Business Affairs and Labor report is adopted as amended. To the bill, Rep. Leader.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, Madam Chair. And we bring before you House Bill 1245, HVAC improvements for schools. And I want to thank my co-prime Rep. Hamrick for her expertise in education. Colorado school infrastructure is aging, and the average age is about 40 years old. This is posing a public health risk in addition to costing our schools a fortune. So the funding gap for infrastructure upgrades and repairs in Colorado schools is approximately $14 billion. So the schools in rural areas, our disadvantaged communities, are disproportionately impacted by the lack of funds to make infrastructure upgrades. The passage of the Federal Infrastructure Investment Act and the Investment and Jobs Act, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act, have made millions of federal dollars available which can be used for the critical HVAC improvements needed for Colorado schools. So accessing these funds not only improves air quality in schools, but these projects could also bring billions of federal dollars into Colorado communities. Unlike last year's bill, this year's bill does not allocate money for grant writing. This decision was made after the determination that LEPs largely struggle was obtaining state funds to supplement local funds necessary to submit competitive grant applications. So the use of certified contractors ensures that taxpayer funds are being spent in fiscally responsible ways and ensuring workers receive a livable wage. And I'll now pass this on to my colleague, Rep. Hamrick, a 30-plus year amazing educator.
Representative Hamrick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Rep. Leader, for your overview of House Bill 251245. Building on the foundation, I want to highlight additional key aspects of this bill that reinforce our commitment to all Colorado schools, particularly those in rural and underserved areas. One of the most critical components of this legislation is its emphasis on sustainability and student health. By upgrading HVAC systems, we are not only improving air quality, but also advancing environmental responsibility in our schools. This initiative sets a precedent for cleaner, more efficient operations in educational facilities and serves as a model for schools nationwide. Equally important is the bill's approach to funding. We are working to ensure that federal dollars are accessible to all districts, especially those that have historically faced financial disadvantage. To further this goal, we have made a key change this year, opening up the IIJA cash fund to receive federal grant money from any program that supports capital or infrastructure improvements relevant to fund recipients. This change creates a streamlined pathway for the potential new federal dollars without the need to establish a separate cash fund, ensuring that more resources reach the schools that need them most. I join Rep. Leader in urging you to support House Bill 25-1245.
Is there Representative Sukla?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's very refreshing seeing the chair in a very good mood like you were. Whatever you had for breakfast, tell me so I can have it in the morning. I just have a question for the sponsor. I know we went through that. If to be a certified contractor, do you have to be in the union?
No. Representative Leader.
No, we actually gave the rural schools a waiver. If they cannot find the certified contractors, they just fill out the form for the waiver, and then they can use their contractors.
So they can use a local contractor.
As
We
long as
have
they're-
no unions where I
Representative
live.
Sukla.
As long-
Hold on, y'all
have to be-
dialoguing. Hold
All
on a
they have to
second.
be is a certified contractor.
Representative Sukla.
You answered my question. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Representative.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1245? Representative Armagas.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. All right, so I guess the issue I had with this in committee was the fact that the people in the schools, the people that were doing this construction, had to pick somebody off of a list of union employees versus having a list of, you can go over there if you need to, but I'll finish and then you can talk. So we had the argument and asked for amendments to make sure that this is something where it can be a list of recommended people, sure, but if you have a list of contractors that perhaps aren't union members that are on the bill or that are on the project or able to do the project, that they should be made readily available to do that. So if that isn't fixed in the bill, this was something that I still have opposition to.
Representative Leader.
You only have to be a certified contractor. You don't have to be a union member, but you can always join the union. They give you a pathway to do that.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1245? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1245. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. House Bill 1245 is adopted. Mr. Sheba, please read the title of House Bill 1117.
House Bill 1117 by Representatives Joseph and Basenecker, also Senators Gonzalez and Weissman, concerning the regulation of vehicle immobilization companies.
Speaker Pro Tem Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1117 and the Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee report.
To the committee report. Representative Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the committee, we made 3 amendments, one of which extended the deadline for property owners to be in compliance with the new signage requirements. We also removed the 15% language related to the minimum payment and simply upped that to a flat $60. And then we also added contractors to the list of entities who perform vehicle mobilizations on behalf of municipalities. Just to make sure there were clarity, we asked for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee report? Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did spend quite a bit of time discussing this bill in committee, and I do appreciate the sponsors pulling the amendment that dropped the minimum payment down to $60, but there is still some language on partial payments, and I have Amendment L006 to the committee report and ask that it be properly displayed. I move, and I'm giving you the entire packet. I move Amendment L006 and ask that it be properly displayed.
One moment, please. Amendment L006 have been moved and properly displayed. Representative Richardson to the amendment.
Thank you. This removed an opportunity to provide a partial payment up front. Really do think it's important. We talked an awful lot about how this may impact those of meager means, and it's an unexpected expense, and it truly is. But to provide a partial payment on such a low cost, I believe really sets folks up for a collections activity later on. We don't need to be not only making a proper small punishment for illegal parking and then set people up to have a bad mark on their credit report. If you're parking illegally, parking in a place that's blocking fire, blocking walkways, using somebody else's assigned parking spot, yeah, it's fair that you should have to pay an amount for doing so, but to pay a small amount and then lose track of it, or maybe not be able to pay for the full amount later and go into collections just isn't right. So I would urge a yes vote.
Representative Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also urge a yes vote on this.
Amendment.
Yeah, it's gonna create issues. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that partial payment is gonna happen. The person gets their vehicle back, can drive away, and then they don't pay the rest. There's not a lot of instances. I just think you got to pay. I think you got to pay the fee. There's so many things that we get charged. I got charged a fee for parking next to Salvaggio's, and it was significant, but I was guilty, and I paid the fee, and I know it's difficult for some, maybe more so than others, but I do think it's going to create more issues if it's just partial payment requirement to get the boot removed and then pay later. I think that's going to create an issue, as was mentioned, for the person paying. They might forget, it goes to collections. The company, they obviously need the full fee to make any profit and stay open. So yeah, I think it's just going to create issues. I do support this amendment and urge an aye vote.
Representative Speaker Pro Tem Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We request a no vote on this amendment. This is not better for the consumer. Candidly, this bill now has parity with an existing payment plan structure that we've already set up in the towing statutes. Ultimately, what this would mean is that an individual either pays the entirety of their fee or they can't get their vehicle back. That also negatively impacts a property owner who might need some of that revenue for rent that month. And so it would put tenants in the position of either paying their rent or other expenses or food, or not being able to go to their job, or not being able to take their kids to school, versus releasing it for $60 and then having an obligation to pay later. And so we would ask for a no vote.
Members, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L007. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Amendment L006 is lost. The question before us is the adoption of the business of, no it's not, sorry, the Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Report is adopted. To the bill, Speaker Pro Tem Basenecker, or Representative Joseph. Representative Joseph to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L007 to House Bill 1117 and ask that it properly be displayed. Thank you.
Amendment L007 has been moved and properly displayed. To the amendment, Rep. Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. L7 is from stakeholding and conversation with industry. It reduces the number of photographs required from 4 to a minimum of 2, one demonstrating the parking violation and one shows the device affixed to the car, and language to address remote removal and an exemption for federally leased land used for commercial parking, and we ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L? Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Though overall, there's some good things in this amendment, there's some issues that I think are going to cause some problems. I don't know if this was stakeholdered actually with industry, and perhaps the sponsors could talk to that after this, but the first part where we're just taking at least one, the first part with the photo taking is fine. The line 6 of the amendment where it moves from a photo to one or more, there's no issues with. But when we get down to the more substantial parts in lines 9 through 12, I'm not sure if industry, I mean, these are small companies. We're not talking big companies with hundreds of employees. Certainly, they're not out patrolling parking lots every 10 minutes, but I'm not sure if 120 minutes or 2 hours to retrieve the device is something that the folks that run these businesses could turn around and get back to pick up. So I'd like to know if that was discussed with industry. And then the second section of there from 13 to 19, where it starts off really well. If the boot's released remotely, certainly it should be moved out of the roadway. It should not be a hazard. I don't think it's kind of unreasonable that if you're so disabled that you can get it off your car, get it away from your car, I think you should be able to also move it out of the roadway, or if somebody's helping you with that. I grieve for folks with disabilities, but we can't just leave big hunks of metal in the road. If it can be removed from the car, they certainly can remove it from the roadway. And finally on that, the way this was described during committee was that the folks that are contracted to do this for private parking areas put drop boxes so they can be returned. So to say that the owner need not return the device or to the location specified just means that they're going to get lost, they're going to get stolen, it's going to be more cost on those that are operating the business, and that's going to turn around and become a need for higher costs and higher penalties for those that have parked illegally. I just can't support that piece of the amendment. The parts farther on where we're adding federally leased land and parking to the counties and other local governments isn't an issue, but I do think the middle portion of that needs some other work, and I would like to know if the 120 minutes was coordinated with the folks in industry or not.
Representative Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would urge a no vote on this amendment. Yeah, my issue is more so the second thing Representative Richardson just mentioned, in that I gotta believe if this boot gets released and the car's in the road, say it's on the side of the road, leaving it where it's at, that seems very risky. Other cars may be driving down this road and not paying attention. That's gonna cause severe damage and probably a major accident. So, I would hope if they can remove the boot or get that release, they can drag it up to the curb. That just, it seems like an accident waiting to happen. I think that's gonna create a lot of issues. So for that reason, I urge a no vote on this amendment.
Speaker Pro Tem Basnick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to be clear, a car that is booted on a roadway is not a residential tow. That is the scope of this bill. The booting that occurs would happen inside of a parking lot and not inside of a roadway. And we have shared these amendments with and continued our stakeholder conversations with folks, including industry, including those that represent apartments and the association they're in this state. And so, yes, we have shared these amendments widely.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L007? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L007. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Amendment L007 is adopted.
Thank you.
Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L008 and ask to House Bill 1117 and ask that it properly be displayed.
Thank you. Amendment L008 has been moved and properly displayed. Representative Joseph to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. L008 changes the notice requirement prior to a vehicle immobilization to be no notice required if the vehicle is parked a second time in the same manner that it received a prior notice for obstructing a fire lane or fire hydrant, parked in a space reserved for individuals with disabilities. Immobilization is ordered by law enforcement or court order if the vehicle significantly blocks a driveway or roadway, if the vehicle is parked in a parking space of a resident, if the vehicle is parked in a parking lot with marked for the exclusive use of residents. 24 hours notice is required for all other parking violations provided to tenants in a lease agreement and for visitor-specific parking, and we ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Richardson.
Now, yeah, we had quite a bit of discussion, as I said, during committee on notice, and actually had heard from operators up in the resort ski areas that they have folks that come up for the day, ski, go home, all within 24 hours. So carving out all the pieces from line 3 and below on this amendment from the 24-hour notice requirement are all, I think, perfectly reasonable, but maintaining the need to still have outside of those exemptions a 24-hour notice really makes this just untenable for those that live in those resort areas. It probably is equally problematic for folks that live around large venues, Pepsi Center, Mile High here in the city, where folks may just park illegally in somebody's private parking lot and be gone long before 24 hours goes on. Actually, the same exists for any private parking lot that serves a commercial business, where folks may come in, go to a bar, leave their car, come back and get it the next day. The warning doesn't do any good, and it's still clogging up parking for everybody else that uses that business. So I move L005 as a substitute amendment to L008 and ask that it be properly displayed.
Amendment L005 has been moved and properly displayed.
Alrighty.
Representative Richardson to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I said, there was quite a bit of discussion about this one in committee, and I know the 24-hour notice was very important to kind of help out those that may have just erred, maybe low income, give them one chance to get their car out of the way before they're booted and have to pay. But I mean, to start with, they are parked inappropriately, but to make a restriction such as that more generalized, absent the exceptions that were in the original amendment, still makes this a bill that would make booting a car in an area where somebody's just going for a few hours to park illegally and then go about their business. They get a free ride, they get a sticker, they have to peel off their window, but the stickers have to be easily removable as well. So I know that this is one of those things. It's maybe not an urban-rural divide, but it's certainly an urban inner city versus rural resort versus in the city near large venues, near bars, et cetera, where commercial businesses' spaces may be improperly used and they need those spaces back the next morning, not 24 hours later the next evening after they've closed for the night. So I would urge a yes vote on this.
Is there any further? Speaker Pro Tem Basnicker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple points of clarification. Again, this bill only applies to residential parking, and so examples given around Mile High or businesses impacted, that is existing law. This bill does not contemplate a change there, and so this simply impacts residential parking. So I want to be clear about that, about a business owner that needs their spots back. They would have all rights and authority that they currently do under statute. The second point would be the simple notifications are struck from the bill through this amendment. Obviously, ask for a no vote on those things alone. The third point I wanted to just highlight is the ski area example that was given. That is why we adopted L7. L7 says that commercial, public land that is leased for commercial purposes would be exempted from the bill, meaning if you go up to a ski area, those are all public lands that are the ski areas used for their parking that are leased for commercial purposes. Existing law remains in full force and effect for those. They are not contemplated under the bill. You could still be booted, towed, et cetera, as you are now. For those reasons, we'd ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Sukla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I represent two ski areas, and it snows a lot at the ski areas, and they brought up the concern that if they aren't allowed to remove that vehicle within the 24 hours, they have trouble plowing the snow and making the parking lot safe. So can you did exempt them? All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L005? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L005. All those in favor say aye. All those in favor say no. Sorry, one second. Sorry. The question before us is the adoption of Amendment L005. All those in favor, aye. All those opposed, no. Amendment L005 has been lost. Members, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L008. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Amendment L008 is adopted. Representative Joseph to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L009 and to House Bill 1117 and ask that it properly be displayed.
Amendment L009 has been moved and properly displayed. Representative Joseph to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. L009 prohibits a vehicle from being immobilized if it is a resident's vehicle that is inoperable and parked in the resident's designated, rented, or purchased parking space or driveway or in a mobile home lot that is leased or owned by the resident, and we ask for a yes vote. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L009? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Amendment L009 is adopted. Representative Joseph to the bill. Speaker Pro Tem Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this bill builds on work that we've done in the towing space, specifically the predatory towing space. And I really want to thank my co-prime sponsor, Representative Joseph, for flagging this issue on behalf of not only her community, but consumers statewide. Candidly, Colorado still remains, until this bill and hopefully the enactment of this bill, really the Wild West of vehicle booting. This industry has operated with little or no oversight, and with the unfortunate result of being predatory in regard to how they will immobilize vehicles without regulation. These companies often target low-income and vulnerable communities, especially in residential areas, and they immobilize vehicles at their discretion, holding people hostage for high fees. We've heard stories, candidly, of folks saying that if we can't pay the $125 now, I'll be back on Monday, see you then. Well, you can imagine the impact on a consumer in those cases, especially if that person needs to take their kids to school, go to their job, etc. It doubles down on a really unfortunate situation for consumers where they could risk losing their job or not being able to pay their rent simply because they have parked in a spot where they shouldn't have. Not that there shouldn't be accountability for those things, and that's why we had tweaked the notification provisions in the bill. But ultimately, this can disrupt the daily lives of residents in our state, making it harder to meet essential needs like work, medical appointments, and education. And it disproportionately impacts low-income families and vulnerable populations. These practices are especially harmful in residential communities where parking regulations can be confusing and enforcement is often inconsistent. So as a result, we are bringing this bill really to address that residential parking piece. The bill has several components: increasing transparency and fairness, protecting residents, and then also increasing accountability for consumer protections. And so happy to dig in more if there's questions or comments, and certainly discussion at the well, but we would ask for your yes vote.
Representative Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L010 to HB 1117 and ask that it be properly displayed. Sorry, I didn't bring
Amendment
it earlier.
L010 has been moved and properly displayed. To the amendment, Representative Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we've heard the term predatory. So what this amendment will do, instead of the boot companies going and, if they are doing this, driving through parking lots overnight from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., what this bill will do is allow the management of like a complex, apartment complex or condominiums, wherever these units are, these properties, it will allow the property manager to hire a third party to act on their behalf and authorize the booting at night. So the property will be paying for the booting. It's not a company driving through lots and looking for illegally parked vehicles. This is the property manager, whoever's at that complex that sees something and wants to actually make sure there's a penalty for illegal parking. So that's what this bill does, and I urge a yes vote.
Is there Speaker Pro Tem Basenecker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to my colleague for bringing this amendment. We would ask for a no vote. Candidly, the third-party piece has been the entirety of the problem in the towing space, where ultimately folks find a third party to authorize every boot or tow at their whim. And this is why it's important that the property manager continues to be, or at least as a result of this bill, is in the role of authorizing those boots. Ultimately, if we don't do that, a third party has just as much financial incentive to authorize every boot as the booting companies do now, and so we would ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Is there any, Representative Richardson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The unfortunate extension of that logic is now you've got to have somebody from property management on hand 24/7 at every residential parking lot to be able to make this call, and that's going to add costs that eventually get passed on to the folks that are renting properties in those areas. I urge a yes vote.
Speaker Pro Tem Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've actually negotiated the amendments you've heard today with the folks who operate these facilities. And I would say, secondly, we have not seen an increase in rent due to similar regulations in the towing space. That has not been data that has come our way.
Members, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L010. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Amendment L01 is lost. Amendment L010 is lost. Is there any further discussion on House Bill? Representative Wook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do urge a no vote on House Bill 1117. I was in committee for this. This is more regulation. This is regulation on small business owners. The reality is, and it's admitted, you know, people are parking illegally. There is a price to pay for that. So they need to be accountable, and that's what the price is. The towing, I think we got rid of. Now it's leaving a boot on the vehicle. So this is really going to affect these small business owners. I guess I just don't understand what we're doing here. We get rid of towing, we get rid of the boot locks. Maybe just no penalties now? I mean, I just, I don't get it. There needs to be accountability. Like I said earlier, I just got a parking fine and I paid my bill. I mean, we abide by the law, we abide by the rules, and I don't understand why we're trying to get rid of rules for someone that's done something wrong or illegal. So this is gonna hurt these small businesses. I don't think there's that many of them around here. It's probably gonna put them out of business, and I just think this is absolutely the wrong direction. And just speaking to that last point, yeah, I don't see a manager being at the property at 3 a.m. That's not reasonable either. So I just can't support this bill, and I urge a no vote.
Members, is there any further discussion on House Bill 1117? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1117 as amended. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. House Bill 1117 as amended is adopted. Mr. Sheba, please read the title of Senate Bill 15.
Senate Bill 15 by Senators Cutter and Marchman, also Representatives Velasco and Morrow, concerning updating the Wildlife Information and Resource Center website.
Representative Velasco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 15.
To the bill, Representative Velasco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a former wildland firefighter, I know how crucial and life-saving it is for the public to have access to timely, localized wildfire and emergency updates. So this bill requires the Wildfire Information and Resource Center website, managed by the Department of Public Safety under the Division of Fire Prevention and Control, to include direct links to county-level emergency websites, and ensures that DPS coordinates with counties to maintain accurate and updated information. And this will help us with emergency response, and we urge a yes vote.
Representative Morrow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, good bill, vote yes.
Members, is there any Assistant Minority Leader Winters?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We heard this bill in committee. I think this bill is important because when there's a fire happening or there's an emergency, people are going to have one place to go and look. I know in rural Colorado, one of the huge issues that we have is when these wildfires come across, especially, lodging horses and cattle, there's usually a fairground meeting point or some similar thing like that. So I think it's good to be able to put all these resources in one place, and I was glad to vote on it at committee, and I'll be a yes on the floor. Thank you.
Members, is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 15? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 15. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Senate Bill 15 is adopted. Mr. Sheba, please read the title of House Bill 1289.
House Bill 1289 by Representatives Okai and Richardson, also Senators Weissman and Frizzell, concerning property tax exemptions for real property leased to public entities.
Representatives Okai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1289 and the Finance Committee report.
To the committee report, Rep. Okai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In committee, we ran an amendment that got rid of a look back and changed some timelines based on all of our stakeholding, and it made it out of committee with unanimous support, and urge a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Finance Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The Finance Committee report is adopted. To the bill, Rep. Okai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a great bill that had support across the aisle, and I am very proud to be able to bring it today. It is designed to bring greater transparency and accountability to property tax exemptions that are granted for real property leased to public entities. In Colorado, all property is taxable unless it is specifically exempt. And leased properties that are used by a metro district for public purposes are generally exempt from property tax. What we have in Colorado currently is a situation where directors lease the property that they own to the Metro District, and that does make them tax exempt. And if that property is an office that is being used for Metro District business, then that would generally be considered a public purpose that should be worthy of that exemption. However, we also have seen situations where there are family members' businesses, superstores, golf courses, and when we have those types of businesses being leased to the Metro District, we want to have a second set of eyes to make sure that they do truly qualify for the exemption. So these businesses are already required to file their lease with the assessor's office. We are also asking that they file a statement with details on the Metro District's use and whether it is used for private purposes. Then it will go to the governing body to make a decision on whether it should be tax exempt or not, and the assessor will then implement that decision. What we essentially have is the opportunity to, for lack of better words, to take advantage of a loophole. And when we have that happening, we have companies not paying their fair share. And all that does is shift the tax burden on populations that truly are struggling to get by, on older adults or people on a fixed income. And so we urge a yes vote on this to ensure that we have a fair and equitable tax system.
Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yep. This is a good bill. My partner here gave you the broad overview. There's a couple of pieces that I wanted to highlight that, you know, our assessors in our counties work very hard, and they're very good at determining the value of properties and what they're actually used for. This bill allows them to focus there. If there's a property that's identified by a board member through a conflict of interest statement, they can examine that, but they shouldn't be deciding whether that use is a good public purpose or not. That's outside the scope of what we expect our assessors to do. So bringing that forward to the local governing body to decide whether there should be an exemption or not is entirely appropriate. Right now, from talking to assessors in two of our larger counties, this isn't a big problem, but it is a known problem. And if this is a loophole or a place in the law that wasn't entirely written in a way to control nefarious purposes, this allows us to close that down before this problem spreads throughout the state. So I would absolutely urge a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1289? Representative Hartsuk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support of this piece of legislation. We heard this in finance, and thank you to the sponsors. They brought a great amendment. The look back was the big area of concern, especially for many of the assessors. That amendment took all of that out. What, in essence, as we went through this bill, certainly on the finance side, the key piece was that it closed a loophole, number one, and it tightened the statute to where the intent of the original bill is now actually codified to where that intent can be implemented, and that was a good thing. So I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Representative Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I sit on the committee. I did vote yes on this in committee. After having some time to think about it, I'm still a yes, and I would urge an aye vote for it. I did want to point out, as did my colleague from Parker, Parker, that removing the piece that looked back retroactively was the major piece that I had a concern about. Removing that is just it's being responsive to concerns. It's being responsive. It's just good governance, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate that from the bill sponsors of removing the one piece that would have given me pause. So I am an aye. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1289? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1289. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. House Bill 1289 is adopted. Majority Leader Durant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
Seeing no opposition, the committee will rise and report.
The House will come back to order. Mr. Shebo, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Madam Speaker, your Committee of the Whole begs leave to report as under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof and making the following recommendations thereon. House Bills 1004 is amended, 1013 is amended, 1117 is amended, 1213 is amended, 1245 is amended, 1285 is amended, and 1289 is amended, passed on second reading, order engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bills 15, 188 is amended, 199 is amended, passed on second reading, order revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Representative English. Members, you have heard the motion. There are no amendments at the desk. Mr. Shebo, please open up the machine. Representative Ricks, how do you vote? Representative Ricks. Not here. We'll come back. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Representative Smith, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Smith votes yes. Representative Leader. Please close the machine. With 40 aye, 20 no, and 5 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Announcements. I love it. I think Representative Clifford, you get to go first.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today is American Red Cross Day at the Capitol. And for those of you that don't know, March is also American Red Cross Month. So if you will welcome our guests from the American Red Cross. I won't say exactly how long, but a little more than 25 years ago, I walked into an American Red Cross chapter and took a job teaching CPR, first aid, AED, ergonomics, slips, trips, and falls. And over the last 25 years have been involved with an extraordinary organization in one way or another, most of my time in something we now call as external relations and GovOps. So there are people in this building that make sure that things work, including I was involved with the Memorandum of Understanding that the Red Cross has with the state of Colorado. Red Cross relies on the power of volunteers and the generosity of donors to fulfill its mission in preventing and alleviating human suffering. And that's it. That's the work. That's the job. They deliver shelter, comfort, and food during disasters. And those disasters can be as small as something happened at your home, and they will make sure that you have what you need. They provide services such as critical blood services and donation that supply about 60% of the nation's blood supply for critical patients. They support service members and their families. Did you know that if you have a service member behind enemy lines overseas, that the Red Cross can still contact them? They can make sure that if you have a child or someone sick in your family, they are where you go to communicate with your service members in those situations. They've trained millions of people with life-saving skills such as CPR, AED training. They train most of the lifeguards that protect your children. Speaking of children, they train babysitters. They supply and install smoke alarms in people's homes. Red Cross delivers international aid and reconnects loved ones separated in crisis, shining a beacon of hope in people's darkest hours. These people selflessly answer the call to help whenever, wherever help is needed, and they uplift our community. And it is an honor to have you with us today. Thank you.
Representative Espinoza.
I guess it's down.
I'd like to announce that the Statutory Revision Committee will be meeting at 7:30 tomorrow morning in House Committee Room 107 to consider bills for introduction. Please join us there, bright and early.
Representative Tatone.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members of the Joint Technology Committee, new time, 8:30 tomorrow morning, up in Senate Room 357. We're going to talk about introduction of a bill.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The Transportation, Housing, and Local Government will meet at 12:35 LSBA for 4 bills. I think this is the order: 141, 1295, 1292, 1198. Thank you.
Representative Johnson and Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today is Pro 15 Day. Pro 15 is an organization of 15 counties on the northern, northeastern, and east central area of Colorado to be a collaborative voice from the rural areas to the Gold Dome, and they are recognizing 25 years today, 7 of those counties in House District 63.
Yes, Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yep, most of the rest of those counties sit in House District 56. Pro 15 was once called Progressive 15. For some reason, it was shortened. I think it fits the district better. We tried for simply God's Country. Apparently, that had already been taken, but
By the
tremendous
Rocky
group of
Mountains,
folks.
Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, great organization, advocating very well for the folks of rural Colorado in their area. So I just join you in celebrating their 25 years. So thank you.
Awesome. Congratulations. Representative Carter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Judiciary Committee will be meeting at 12:35 in room 107. We will have bills 25-1294, 25-1031, 25-1301, and Senate Bill 25-171. Thank you.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Chalk another one up for me signing up today. Get
Yes,
excited.
you did.
Yay. Okay. House Human Services, Health and Human Services will meet at 112, in room 112 at 15 minutes upon adjournment. We will hear 2 bills, 183 and 151. See you there.
Madam Majority Leader. Oh, I have an announcement. Representative Rutinel will substitute for Representative Valdez on THLG for today only. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar until March 26, 2025.
Seeing no objection, the balance of the calendar will be laid over until tomorrow. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until later today.
The House will stand in recess until later today.